Hi there, and welcome back to CKM Red Rugby League. As you can see, we've added a little bit of production value this week with the new intro. Keep an eye out for those. They're going to be coming in thick and fast as we keep on trying to grow the channel, bring you guys better content. But all that aside, round 10 has just finished with the last game literally finished no more than sort of an hour ago. So myself and Luke are back to review the round. How are you going, mate?
Mate, I'd be better if my tips were as good as the production intro, put it that way. Yeah, I'll give you the congrats before you rub it in. You're up 3-2. The Bunnies doing me dirty there. We knew the Warriors was a bit of an outside shot. But look, all things considered, not too bad. How are you?
I'm going well, mate. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here in England. I'm 3-2 up. The birds are singing. The life couldn't be better right now. Right then, so we will jump into the first game of the round, and of course, when Thursday opens up with the minor premiers being beaten by an injury-hit Raiders side, you know that your multis are probably not going to survive the weekend. 24-20 to the Raiders. How did that happen?
I don't know. That's about as good as I can give you, mate. It was the old man and I was sitting down watching the game and eating dinner. We were just like, what's going on? The Roosters just didn't look themselves. You know, everyone's saying, "Oh yeah, no, Roosters 13 plus." We said Roosters 13 plus. Easy, it's easy money. We had it $2. Get your money, double it up. But no. The Raiders decided that for the first time in 33 years, they're going to come up to the SCG and get themselves a couple of juicy and much-needed points. I mean, I don't know if it was the Raiders playing out of their skin or the Roosters just playing some dodgy football, but George Williams probably had his best game in a Raiders uniform for me.
Do you know what? I don't even think it was the halves. I think the Raiders forward pack won that game. Dynamis Louis, man of the match for me. 2 strips at vital points in the game. He gets the first try as well. Josh Papali lifting. Just you can't compete with a forward pack that's doing it as well as the Raiders pack did. And as you mentioned, the Roosters had a really bad off day. They completed at 66% by the end of the game. Yep. And that was just things started to get scrappy. The desperation was sinking in, and when the Roosters went 2 tries up, you think, right, okay, here it comes. They're going to get a roll on from here, and it just didn't happen. The Raiders clawed them back into a really just a bit of a dogfight, an arm wrestle up the middle, and coming up against a Raiders pack as dominant as theirs, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not. And the Raiders forward stepped up. I mean, Josh Papali went through a hole greater than Sydney Heads. I think it was Mitch Orbison got called back for being offside, so he's just stepped back and Papali's gone straight through. It was ugly viewing. It was really ugly viewing, but I think the way that we've got to look at it from a table standpoint, from a competition standpoint, is it means that there is no gimme. There is absolutely, I mean, you could argue the Dogs, but there's no gimme this year. There are some serious teams, and even with injuries, and we'll talk about it later on with Manly, even with some really good players out, some really, really strong core players to that Raiders side, they got up over the back-to-back defending premiers, and arguably, probably with a bit of a flattering scoreline.
Yeah, and I mean, you look over some of the stats in the game. I mean, Roosters, 23 missed tackles. I mean, the Raiders had 20. 14 errors and 7 penalties conceded on both sides. I mean, 21 errors in that game, 14 of them belonging to the Roosters.
Yeah,
it's uncharacteristic, really. I mean, let's be honest, the Roosters still look like they could have and were maybe going to win that game, even with as awful as as they played. And I mean, we said when they played the Storm and they got beat, only completed around 66%, still ran them close. So even when the Roosters have a bad game, it doesn't mean you're going to get a result. And the Raiders were dogged enough to hold out for that result, and they earned every single iota of that competition point. It was a really strong performance from them.
Yeah, and it's not even a where to now, because you look at the Roosters. Yes, they're missing a couple of players, but they still have one of the best sides, one of the best rosters in the competition. It's now there's a lot of critics, ourselves included, said Raiders are no chance for a top 4 finish now.
Yeah, I mean, we posted something up on the page that said, finish the sentence, without Josh Hodgson, the Raiders are ... and you'd say the overall consensus of that was not going to make the 8.
Yeah.
With performances like that, they don't just make the 8, they probably make the semis. Like, it's... I mean, we waxed lyrical on the Roosters' depth as well, talking about, the fact that you've got Orbison who can cover into the centres, Lamb who can cover the halves and the 9. But when teams turn up like that, and it's, again, you saw it with Manly, and we'll cover that game a little later, when teams have got a point to prove, they find an extra 10%, and those extra percentages made the entire difference on the day.
I mean, there's not much more to say about that. The Roosters, I think, finally it showed that the Roosters were a little vulnerable. I think that game specifically, they missed the go forward there of Vic Radley and his nimble feet through the middle.
Yeah.
But it makes for an interesting round 11. I mean, the Roosters coming up against the Warriors side who got thumped earlier, while the Raiders looking to go against a Bunnies side that arguably should have won, maybe. But you know what? We'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah. Okay, then. So we are now on to the Storm and the Titans. And I tell you what, I will openly say it. When the score was 18-6 at halftime, I dropped you a message saying the Titans are still in this. And if they can keep on defending and holding out the way that they are, they could maybe get something from this. But then all of a sudden the second half rolls around and Cameron Munster decides to take it up to another gear, and all of a sudden the Titans are just a dot on the horizon.
I'll openly admit I didn't catch most of the game on TV. I was out at dinner for this one. I do want to brag very quickly before we analyse it. The Cheese, the Wombat, getting in off. I told you so. Last try scorer, we love that. But yeah, look, 6-6 after about 25 minutes. I'm sitting here thinking, oh man, like the Storm's in trouble here. I said in the preview, 13 plus. There's no value in it for me because the Titans very well and have been known to turn up against the Melbourne Storm. But yeah, I mean, I'll let you take a lot of the analysis on this one. But Munster and Cameron Smith said, you know what? We're done letting these feeble little teams throw us around. Here's 55 minutes of our best football.
Yeah, and I mean, the Storm, there was a lot of errors. The Storm were uncharacteristically poor for large parts of that game. I mean, when they were moving the ball to the edges, players dropping balls cold, you saw through the course of the game, they got a penalty, and literally off the tap, they spilled the ball. And, that's just not something that you see from a Storm side. I mean, still completed very highly at 80%, 32 out of 40 sets completed. They were, and I'd say the highest part of that came from their second half performance. I tipped Momirovski and Adokar any time for last week on the preview, and that would have got up had Momirovski not had his hands coated in butter before the game. And he bombed one out wide, unfortunately, but that's by the by, So, but yeah, the Storm turned up in that second half. Obviously, Craig Bellamy wasn't happy over the course of the halftime and let the players know his thoughts towards that.
Yep.
I think Brandon Smith in the 8 shirt is probably the next level of prop evolution. You see props now that are a lot more mobile. your Regan Campbell-Gillards, your big blokes that have got an offload in them. Whereas now you're starting to see Brandon Smith, the more nimble prop forward with a good bit of leg speed and a whole lot of attitude. Because I mean, just when he lifts, that entire team comes with him, just because of how fiery and passionate he is.
Yeah, look, Brandon Smith, I think, is a classic example of a game changer. And he doesn't look it. The dude is what, 5'8", 85, but it's one of the strongest, probably the strongest pound for pound player, I think, in the NRL. He's an absolute gun, can play lock, can play hooker, plays prop. When was the last time that you saw someone that was 5'8", 85 starting as a prop and doing as much damage as he does? You'd have to go back years.
He's the next evolution of impact players. I think, honestly, I love Brandon Smith, but I think that he is best used as an impact player. When you start him out, he doesn't have the same impact, but when you start to move him around the pitch and he starts targeting some of them tired bodies, and again using that leg speed and that strength that he's got, because he's got a hell of a fend on him and a good bump too.
Oh yeah,
like he'll pick holes. The amount of line break assists he'll rack up in a season if you use him as an impact player is ridiculous. But yeah, getting over for a try. Your tip gets up on that one. The Titans just need to shore up a little bit. They need to focus on getting the edges right for me in the middle, especially with the players that they're getting in next year. You know, the David Fafita's doing the rumors, still doing the rounds 6 weeks later. They get him, whatever. But either way, they've got Herman Essa coming next season. They've got Big Tino from the Storm as well. He'll be there. They're going to have a really good forward pack. They just need to shore it up in the backs now. Make sure that you've got those edge players that are going to basically hold teams out wide. Because as soon as the Storm did click, started getting the ball wide to Olam and Adokar and Momorovsky, that's where the Titans really started to fall down and they started to look like a weaker bottom end of the table side. Yeah,
I think signing number one in the next couple of weeks for me should be Anthony Don. He deserves one more year, and I think he'd be great for the culture of the club with all of these new guys coming in. One could argue they probably could have gone and should have gone after Kotrick. Whether they will. Well, I mean, not that they can anymore with the Dogs getting him, but whether they should have is a different matter. The other move I would make is re-signing Philip Sammy for 3 or 4 years. Yep. Philip Sammy has been, if not is, one of their best players, and very well could be the next captain if Ryan James were to move on either at the end of this year or next. This is a little exclusive, so take this with a grain of salt because it's not been reported anywhere else. There's an offering for Ryan James to go to the Super League as of the end of this year, once his ACL gets right. If that doesn't happen, he'll have next year, obviously, to get himself back into it, get it rolling. Whether the Titans keep him after that, it's yet to be seen. But if there's a good offer that satisfies both player and club, do not be surprised if Ryan James goes to England after this year.
Yeah, there'll be many more players going out there, especially with the Isaac Moses clear out of most clubs. So, but that's one for another day. And we then move on to the Tigers and the Broncos. The Tigers getting up 48-0 over the Broncos, and to be honest, it was horror show viewing if you're a Brisbane fan, or even if you remotely feel any empathy for watching a team get bashed for 80 minutes. I mean, 48-0, the scoreline says it all. It really was as bad as it looks on the scoreboard.
Yeah, look, again, I caught probably the last 15 minutes of it, and it was ugly viewing. It was really, really ugly viewing, and I think it's the try that circulated around rugby league media all weekend. The try to Luke Garner, his first one. I don't know what Isako was doing there. I don't know why he's tried to jam in. It's a 4-on-4, and he's come in and made it a 3-on-none. That takes some skill. That takes some serious skill to do. And I just don't know what to do. Seabold now has the ultimatum. He's got to win half the games from here on out, or he's gone. And the players, I think, should, for most of them, have that same ultimatum. Win half of them, or start looking for another club.
Something's got to change. I mean, you watch that game. The errors that were made that led to tries were absolutely next level. I mean, so for example, Luciano Leilua, I think it was his second try. The ball off a dropout comes out to Leilua. Coates comes in, commits in on Mbai, who is a good 2 meters from Luciano Leilua and looks like he's getting nowhere near that ball. And Leilua, as good as, jogs around the edges and goes into the corner. The Billy Walters try, a bomb gets put up and it is nothing more than a speculator. Isako is a rep level winger. Tessie New is a rep level fullback. So for all these people that go, there's injuries and all these things. We had a look the other day. The Broncos had 6 or 7 more rep level players in their squad, in their 17 than the Tigers did. So a bomb goes up, Walters chases through, and literally just puts his foot on it, and then still has enough time to get around both Coates and I think it was Coates. Yeah, Coates had first go at it, but Walters ultimately gets there. I mean, Rugby League 101. Don't let the ball bounce. It's not like a football. It's not gonna go in the direction it travels. It's gonna go anywhere. You don't take that level of risk.
Look, what else do you want to say about that? It was, look, I'm trying not to compare it to years and teams past. It looked like the Parramatta Eels of the early 2010s, just with how dog crap disinterested they looked. It was really bad. It was really, really bad. And I mean, we saw, I believe Dayton said on the review last week, we saw him say that Seabold's got to go, and there needs to be changes made. First change that he has to make, and he's got to do this. If he doesn't change that halves pairing this week, he has to be sacked next week. There is no way that you can leave Milford and Croft sitting there. You have to start Tom Dearden. If you don't start Tom Dearden, and arguably put Tessie New in at 6, go Dearden and New at the halves and give them 10 weeks. If you really need Milford, put him at fullback. Because I'm not putting Isako there. I'm not putting Darius Boyd there. Coates is untried. And I don't know who else they have in the reserves that can go there.
I mean, so for me, from here, it's as good as a win-win for Seabold, because Seabold's not going to walk. There is no chance of him walking. No. So one or two things happens. He sees out his 10 games. The Broncos turn it around. Great. They squeeze into the 8 at the end of the year, and everybody hails it as one of the greatest turnarounds of a team in modern history. Or Seabold sticks around, eventually gets sacked, and he keeps the money that the Broncos will go. He has to get paid out of his contract because he's not walked. The Broncos have sacked him. So it's a win-win from here. If you're a Broncos fan, I think it's as good as a lose regardless what happens, because Seabold refuses to look at his own roster. I mean, so the excuses that he's listed off in the last 2 weeks alone, injuries, okay, but you've still got more rep level players than the team that just hammered you for 48 points.
Yep.
Null and void. He talks about his roster and the fact that Bennett left him a poor roster. The worst excuse that you could ever give. I mean, it's the equivalent of, I don't know, blaming your ex for the fact that you cheated in your new marriage. Like, it's awful. It's terrible. You are the coach. You are the person accountable. It's regardless of what's happened in the past or the roster that you've been left to work with. I mean, there are a ton of high quality players still in that Broncos lineup, but the confidence is so shot and bottom level right now that something has to be done drastically in order to make them become a force to be reckoned with again. And it's got to be the halves. Keep on changing your fullback and your wing and your centres all you want. The problem is the level of creativity in the halves. I mean, that wasn't the underlying problem this week. The underlying problem was terrible defence and poor decision making. But in order to win games, you need to score points. They're not going to score points with the current halves combination that they have. Even when they beat the Dogs last week, if TPJ doesn't turn up and play the way he does, they lose that game. And it's only the fact that he turns up and plays the way he did and took control, the fact that they've got 2 competition points from that game. Nothing to do with Milford or Croft.
And the sad part is TPJ, and this is only from what I saw in the last 15, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, TPJ and Payne Haas look like they dominated. They look like they had both of them had really good games going through the middle of the field, getting the Broncos up there, but the Broncos just couldn't do a damn thing inside their attacking half.
Yeah, it was just... It's all well and good having good forwards, but if you've not got someone who can manipulate a defensive line to create those holes for those forwards, you're essentially relying on nothing more than them getting an arm free or post contact meters, because otherwise it's just you're using them like human cannonballs at that point, which ultimately is going to lead to injuries. No player wants to go straight at a player. You're taught it even as young as under 9s. Spaces, not faces. It's as simple as that.
Look, Seabold's got to go. Croft, I think, is becoming very quickly the worst by the year. And, it's... The Dogs, at least, I think, have something to look forward to. They know that they have a new coach coming in, whoever and whenever. Arguably, it's going to be old mate Barrett. But if things don't, the Broncos, what do they look forward to? Where can they look to? There's not much going on at the moment for them.
Yeah. And with that, then, we will move into Super Saturday. And what a Super Saturday it was. You've got teams staging comebacks. You've got late drama. I mean, what more can you want from a Saturday? You start with the Dragons and the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are 20 points to 10 up at the half. They are well and truly in the driver's seat. Everyone's multi looks like it's on its way out because, I mean, the Dragons have been one of the most improved teams of the last sort of 4 rounds. The Bulldogs have just been beaten by the Broncos last week. Realistically, you're not tipping for them. And then all of a sudden, the Dragons just open it up, and it all stems from that Clune show and go. And then he puts Duffy into the corner.
Oh, how good was it? How good has Adam Clune been for the Dragons? He has been superb, and you can argue as much as you want about whether these changes could have and should have been made a long time ago. But Adam Clune, mate, get him up here in the commentary box. I'll buff him all you like. He's an absolute gun. 11 runs for 117 meters, a line break, a try assist. As you mentioned, that insane run to put Duffy in the corner was fantastic. 11 tackles, 7 kicks for 167 with a forced dropout. He's beautiful. He's a beautiful man to watch. He and George Williams are quickly becoming two of the most threatening number 7s in the game at the moment. And this isn't discrediting the Bulldogs because the Bulldogs came out on fire. They got woken up by the 10-0 deficit with the Dragons, scored 3 converted tries in 13 minutes to swing the momentum, and then a great bomb by, who was it, Norman, I think, who put the bomb up?
Think so, yeah.
I think it was. Norman put the bomb up. It was a shocker. There's no chance anyone's catching that one. And Jason Saab just manages to be in the right spot at the right time to then spark the Clune little banana kick I'm getting my plays wrong here. We're going Dufty first, and then the banana kick in for Corey Norman.
Yeah.
For me, game of the round.
Yeah. I mean, and then you've got obviously the late drama. I'm not gonna harp on Montoya. You know, it's his second game back in nearly a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I watched that back, and I think he's still ropey from the tackle before. I mean, maybe 3 tackles before he essentially gets head slammed. It was heavy contact. He gets driven in. There's nothing dirty in it. He gets up. He looks a little woozy, and then all of a sudden the Dogs are trying to play out of their own half, which is not even their own half, their own 20. Lewis throws an absolute speculator. It comes down around his knee. Yes, he could have gathered it in, but I realistically, if I'm an edge player, I don't expect to see my half throwing a ball like that in a game with 60 seconds left, all tied up. Or even if you just get it down the other end, pump it over the sideline and try and force the error in defence, that's fine. And you take it to golden point if you don't. Don't throw a speculator out of absolutely nowhere that close to your line, because all it did then, off Montoya's knee, straight into the hands of Corey Norman, and then he's running away for the winning try. And you look at the stats, and the stats portray it as a very close game, and it really was a game of 2 halves. I mean, as we said, Bulldogs led 20-10 at the half. It looks like the Dragons are pretty down and out. They come out firing for the second half. It takes them a little while to find that comeback. Eventually, though, as soon as they got one, it was quick fire from there. I mean, 50-50 on possession. The Dragons win it on attack, and that's literally the only difference. The Dragons attack fired in the closing stages of the game.
Yeah, look, it wasn't pretty viewing for the Dragons for probably 30 or so, for the middle 50 minutes. But they had a cracking start. They finished as well as any team could have. And they got up. Yeah, that's all there is to it. Lomax, another solid game for him. Dufty coming into his own once again. I've already basically given Adam Clune a blowjob with how much I've just hyped him up, so I'm not gonna speak too much more of him. But Ben Hunt again, fantastic in the 9. I'm telling you, I'm standing by what I said last week. The Dragons are going to be there come finals time. They won't get far. They're not going to get far, but they'll be there first week of finals.
Yeah, I'd back that. I mean, they started out like a house on fire. Dufty goes over with less than a minute on the clock. Aitken follows it up inside 7 minutes, and then it all fell apart. And it's just consistency. The Dragons just need to work out consistently at this point. If they'd have played like they did in the first 10 minutes and then the final 15, the entire game, they put 50 on the Dogs. But because they slip away and they have this tendency to lose focus and fall apart, it creates closer games. And you can see that those 50-50s, I mean, they come out on top in this one, but in the next one, I don't know, but the Dragons get up. It were a fantastic game from a neutral point of view. I mean, Dragons fans will have been suffering heavy palpitations and chest pains for the last 10 minutes of that game, but all worth it when you come up with a win in the end.
Yeah, agreed. But if they pull the same stunt in the middle half of that game against the Sharks team next week, they're not going to have as much joy after 80 minutes. I'll be pretty confident in that one.
Yeah. And then we're on to the next team that attempted to stage a comeback but just left it a little too late. Rabbitohs versus Knights. This was the first one that we came to a difference on, where I went Knights, you went Rabbitohs, and for all money, it looked like the Knights were gone in this one.
For the first 65 minutes, mate, I was just watching the 1 to 10 that I had suggested just float away. The Knights just looked superb. The Rabbitohs looked like absolute dog crap. The only thing really keeping them in it was Kalen Ponga not bringing his kicking boots to Bankwest. One of 4 from conversions, 2 of 5 on the day. But yeah, it's not often that you can say that Mark Nichols started to come back. He scored the first try on the 65th minute. And then, well, I mean, really, we can just say Anton Damien Cook and Cody Walker, those 2 exploded in the last 15 of the game to really try and bring a comeback into fruition. For the Bunnies, they fell just short, and you can, for me, put that probably to the lack of experience outside and a lack of game time this year. But another 5 minutes, and the Knights were riding on the horses back up the F3 with a loss.
Yeah, we'll talk on the inexperience, but I tell you what, the rookie, Bradman Best, had James Roberts' number all day long, and Roberts bit right into that battle. Where Roberts had usually tried to go on the outside of someone, he's going straight at Best, because Best, he was living in his head rent-free from that point on. As soon as Best had got him over the sideline, that was it. Roberts was engaged in that battle. He was a dog with a bone, and he wasn't going to stop. Credit to Best. He had a really good game, but Kalen Ponga, yes, his conversions were off, but that's how you answer criticism. Andrew Johns came out earlier in the week and said that he's not really evolved his game, and all of a sudden Ponga turns up playing like a 5'8" out the back, putting in kicks close to the line where you'd see him usually just give that on. And I think that's where the Knights need to be working, because while Mitchell Pearce is a great in-play kicker, his short kicking game and his fifth and last options sometimes lead to too many 7 tackle sets for me. You watch him and he'll drill through. Like if you're going to the sky, Mitchell Pearce is your guy. Like if you're going on the floor, give it to Kalen Ponga, because Pearce, it's like he's not figured out the weighting on a grubber yet, and it is leading to too many 7 tackle sets. And the better teams will punish you. I mean, the Rabbitohs, while they came up close, it's pretty damning when they've not actually beaten a team in the top 4 this year yet. And it seems to be that top 6, even at a push, that the Rabbitohs realistically are going to be there or thereabouts when it comes to finals time. But I don't see them making it past the prelims at this point, because they're not beating any of the top 6 right now. They're struggling, and they're really struggling in those points. And arguably, they could and should have won that game with how they came back. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Burgess has the ball dislodged on the way down in wrestling to get over, they'd win that game. But those are the difference makers on the day for me.
Yeah, Rabbitohs is probably a second week team in finals. I don't see them going too well in any other way, but it all depends on whether Latrell comes back after a suspension, probably in a touch better shape, and kind of with the drive to play the type of footy that he played at the Roosters, and whether that spine can start to click as it was before the suspension. I think you can tell that they missed Latrell coming out the back, because Johnson just doesn't have that ball playing ability. But yeah, look, as for the Knights, you could argue that to win after playing 60 minutes of good football, and you could see how disappointed they were at full time, even with the win. It makes for a bit of a scary proposition as we move closer to finals footy.
Yeah. And I tell you what, it was exactly as we said. It was wet conditions. There wasn't going to be much ball played. And you look at all the tries, it was just individual efforts, realistically. There was no flashy plays or anything along those lines. It was just people holding it tight to the chest and using a bit of footwork to get over. I mean, Kurt Mann getting over for a try, we called that. We were so close to getting the Man Walker double. But damn you, Damien Cook, and your fast little legs. Someone needs to get in touch with Damien and let him know that the next time that Cody's running through, plant a ball down. Get out of the way, pal. It's great. Congratulations on a first career double, but you you ruined a few multi-tips with getting beating Cody to the ball like that. So not in my good books right now.
Oh, look, I can't be too mad at him. Obviously, Kurt Mann and Walker, both of them scoring a try, I think was pretty close to $10 if you just had the two of them in a multi. So if anyone did take our tips, one, we apologise on that one, but two, blame Damien Cook because we were pretty well spot on. But I think before we move on to the next one, that shows just how good Kurt Mann has been. We haven't spoken about him once outside of, man, he scored. Congrats if anyone had him on our tips. But that's how good he's playing. He's a great 5'8", doesn't get the hype, doesn't get the credit that he deserves, but he's been one of the Knights' best this year.
He has really owned that 6 jersey, and he is the Knights' halves pairs are your classic example of when you get your combos right. I mean, you got Pierce, who's your ball player, the guy with your vision. You know, you put man at second receiver and let him put a bit of footwork on at the line. He is just your ball runner. He's your guy close to the line where they've come up, they've jammed in. There's not much happening out wide. Have a go yourself, and it comes off so often. So you see utilities. You know, their versatility sometimes is the death of their own careers. They never really make a position their own. But Kurt Mann, a lot of people were sceptical about his ability as a 6, but he turns up at the Knights, makes that jersey his own, and now he's keeping some good players out. You know, Connor Watson's not going to be back in that 6 shirt. You know, Tex Hoy is going to have to wait a while for Kurt Mann to disappear off the scene, or at least start to fade away. But yeah, the Knights are looking good for me.
Yeah, Knights just, I think, semi-final football for them.
Yeah, they're on for a top 4. They're definitely on for a top 4 in-season finish, but whether they can replicate it all the way into the finals, yeah, they're probably a semis team. They're not there in the final for me. But one team that is expected in the final suffered a bit of a shock upset this week. I can't help but notice your neck is very bare this week. Where is your Parramatta scarf, Mr. Luke Jobson? Where is it?
I am not going to comment because if I comment, this page and channel will be demonetized, and I won't have a laptop or a phone. We're not going to talk about it. I will only put this comment out. 8-point try.
Oh no! Here we go. Okay. So for those that missed, at the end of the game, there is literally 17 seconds on the clock. Parramatta crossing the right corner, and there's a question of a potential knees in the ribs. But because
a question?
There's some contact, but I will say this: it is the same contact that Chan's Nickel Clockstat made when the Roosters go over in the right corner in their game, and they cleared the contact there. So I'm 50-50. I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one. And even so, there'd have been riots. If that one had gone upstairs and they awarded an 8-point try, honestly, the NRL headquarters are probably getting petrol bombed by Manly fans at that point because they've had so many rough calls against them over these last few weeks. They had the Bradman Best pushing the back the week before, the Tommy Turbo forward pass that never was, you know, the penalty that could have been, and there's many things, and I can't help but feel, yeah, Manly have had a bit of a store up at the green. So I'm more than happy to say leave the 4-pointer out of this one.
Look, I'll bitch and moan as much as I want about it and whether it could, should, would have. Parramatta didn't deserve to win that game.
No.
They turned up after about 20 minutes and for 60 minutes of that game played okay football, and for the last 20 played some really good football. But when you play like how they did for the first 18 minutes and let a team that has no Tommy Turbo, that has no Fanua Blake, just run riot, and then of course the try right before halftime to Joel Thompson, you can't expect to win a game when you show up and play 60 minutes of football. And this isn't discrediting Manly because they're a good side any day of the week, but especially at Brookvale, where it is known as a fortress for a lot of teams. You just can't turn up and play like that. No Ferguson and no Matheson definitely helped because George Jennings was well out of whack for a good chunk of that game for me. But even then, Parramatta just didn't deserve to be within 4, never mind winning.
Yeah, so I had the game on, and just as kickoff hit, I started getting my son dressed. I took him upstairs. We were chatting upstairs for 10 minutes. I come downstairs and I see 16-0. I was like, oh, okay, somebody's messed up on the scoreboard here. Check NRL.com. Nope, it's right. And honestly, with the way that the Eels were playing, we're very lucky to still be within a stone's throw at half-time. I mean, the one thing that Manly did very, very well, and it's something that you've called out too, is the fact that Jay Field can only pass one way. So you catch him out on that right edge, you're jamming on him. He's not going to throw a moneymaker, over the top. What was it? Flanagan did it for Josh Morris's try at the weekend where they caught them jamming in, and he just floats a nice ball over the top and it cuts them wide open. Field isn't going to do that because he doesn't have it in his locker passing from left to right. From right to left, he does. But if you catch him out on that right side, it's as good as jamming on him and you're good. And they figured that out, and it then meant that essentially Dylan Brown has to cover both sides of the field for there to be any sort of option going laterally, because you got a halfback that can only pass one way, the ball's only going one way.
Yeah, and that's really where Parramatta misses Mitch Moses. And you can credit Gutherson all he wants about how he's basically playing as a third half and letting Field dart around and play on the side that has Sivo. But another thing I think that Parramatta needed to do, especially when Sully was injured and then had to come back on, was they didn't target him. For the first 6 minutes he was on the field, they didn't target him. And the first time that they do, it was Michael Jennings that goes straight through untouched, not a worry in the world. There's just certain things about the game plan that didn't sit right or feel right with Parramatta. And, whether it was that they just executed the game plan wrong, and obviously they didn't wake up walking off the bus. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, Manly played well. They deserved the win. They're still going to be there or thereabouts come finals time. It's just a matter of whether they're going to be within the 8 or just outside.
Yeah, and Manly really had to dig deep. They lose Garrick to a HIA. Sully, who's had to have a painkiller injection halfway through the game for his sternum, essentially just he drags himself back onto the field. The trainer's saying to him, "You've got to go on." He's shaking his head, saying, "I'm done for the day." Gets back on, does his job, does it well enough. Parker switching sides. That was smart by Manly, because you've got Gashevsky, who was then switched out to the left-hand side. If you've got Moses Sully and a guy who's predominantly a second rower and has probably played a little bit of centre at reserve grade and juniors, chances are that dominant left edge of Para is going to do well. But if you switch a natural centre out that way, who's got some ball playing ability, who's basically the defensive understanding of what it is to be a centre, and you saw it with the Sivo opportunity late in the game. He recognises that ball's going fast, so he just hangs out the back. He lets Sully jam in, and he goes out the back, and then he shuts down Sivo. And I'm still in the thought process of, if Sivo's knee doesn't get twisted, his foot gets locked underneath and his knee doesn't get twisted, maybe he does manage to find a way over the top. But it's the fact that he does pull up lame that probably saves a few of Manly's prayers there. But no, that's no discredit to Parker. He comes up with a defensive read and he has every right to make that tackle and hold out a try.
Oh, it was the best tackle of the night. There's no way that anyone is stopping Sivo, and Parker gets his head in the right spot, shoulder right into the hip, a huge hit, hurt Sevo. Sevo's got to go off. I'm not going to say it saves the game, but
they go over the other side and score anyway. But
I mean, even with 30 seconds left, Gutherson wouldn't have taken the kick, and they would have said, you know what, yeah, we're probably going to lose anyways. But it was just superb. It was a great hit. I mean, I feel dirty giving Manly props. It doesn't sit right in the mouth. But they played a superb brand of football. They deserved the win. They got the win. And now both teams are going to have to rebound next week with Parramatta going to get potentially all three that I mentioned earlier back. The rumor is that Moses is going to be back next week, as is Matheson and Fergo against the Tigers, which is handy. While Manly are going to come up against the Cowboys side, who gave the Panthers a run for their money. So I don't know. It's shaping up to be a very interesting round 11.
Yeah. And with that, then we will move on to the Warriors and the Sharks. And this game was a very early one for me, so I was very half asleep watching this one. But when a side hits the front 3 minutes in, Braden Hamlin-Uele going over, you know that it's either going to go one or two ways. The team's going to start fast and fade like the Dragons did, or alternatively, they're just going to keep going and there's no stopping them. The Sharks belonged in the latter category, unfortunately, for New Zealand. And we said that this one was going to be close. And a lot of people said that this one was going to be close because the Warriors are so hard to tip for and against this year. They're incredibly unpredictable. They've won games that they shouldn't have. They've lost games that they should have won. And this one's, I tipped the Sharks, so I'm not fussy. I'm fine with that. I said Sharks on the head-to-head because I don't want to put a handicap to it. I'm sweet with that. But the Warriors need to do far better there because the Sharks just basically rolled it up the middle for the first 30, 40 minutes of the game, and then just moved it to the edges as some of their bigger outside backs started to tire.
Yeah, look, I tipped the Warriors. I thought they were going to get up for the guys that were going to leave after this round. Obviously, I was way off the mark. It was really, really dangerous early on. Hamlin-Uele is an absolute gun. He's a beast. He's one of the next premier props in the competition. Tell you what, for those that are interested, he scored the first try in 3 out of his last 4 games. Last 4 games starting, sorry. So if anyone wants to note that for the tipping book. But yeah, look, the Sharks have just run riot over a Warriors side that didn't look like they didn't want to be there. And it's very worrying now, I think, when you look at the grand scheme of things, knowing that this is a Warriors team that lose 4 of their top 30. 3 of those were in the starting or in the 17 this week. And you note that they're just not looking like a Warriors side. They're not the Warriors that we thought they could have been with Nikorima back in the lineup. He didn't look too good. They dropped Katoa to the bench coming back for Lawton to start, but that didn't pay off. Katoa didn't look too good. Look, it was a mix of the Warriors playing like a reserve grade side, and the Sharks just their attack for the first time looked clinical.
And I tell you what, we said it in the first 4 or 5 rounds, even as far as 7 and 8. Sean Johnson needs to attack the line. And now what that's doing is that's creating spaces for those forwards to go through. Because people have realised now, Sean Johnson's figured out he's got a running game again. Okay, this is a problem. It means that they can't sit off him and wait for him to put a ball out the back anymore. They have to go at Johnson. So when he goes laterally at the line and he's got that step on him and he's got a big man on his shoulder, there's now that question mark. Is he going to run this one? Which, 4 or 5 rounds ago, there wasn't that question mark. That question mark wasn't associated to Sean Johnson's name. However, it is now back, and he is looking like one of the better sixes in the comp again because he is attacking the line, he's creating space, he's manipulating the defensive line, and he's creating an air of doubt. When a halfback does that, he's nothing but a joy to play off because it means that those big forwards have got that extra yard that allow them to get a bit of a basically brace for contact, get through the line. You've got Townsend. Townsend belongs in the same category for me as the likes of Clune and Green. He's just frills halfback that's just good for moving the ball around and steadying the ship when you need it. And that's what's making the Sharks play well because they're ticking well through their spine again, even with Dugan at fullback.
Yeah. Oh, Dugan wasn't at fullback this week. It was Will Kennedy who was able to
sorry.
Kennedy bagged himself one. And we've been calling it for a couple of weeks now. Kennedy's got to get his shot. He's got to get his shot. I didn't see why he got the shot today. I didn't. Obviously, Moylan wasn't in there. And they sprung a change, I guess, dragging Dugan back to what I wouldn't say was his preferred position of centre, but the position where he's been playing a lot better. And it worked. It just worked. It's just they can't keep afford to changing that now. The Sharks can't afford to have Kennedy in for a couple, then Moylan back in for 2 or 3, then Kennedy out, then back in, then in. They can't keep playing the hokey pokey no matter what way you look at it.
No, and the Sharks look a far better side for having one fullback that they know is going to be there. I mean, is there an argument for Moylan as a 14? I'd probably say so. Because, we've seen it time and time again. Teams that chop and change their spine don't do well. It's happened at the Cowboys this year. Their spine's been changed too much. It's not gone well. We saw it at the Rabbitohs this week. Without Latrell playing long ball out the back, they're now back to a running fullback instead of a ball-playing fullback, which means that your entire back line has to adjust to that, especially when there's set players on. So you saw the Rabbitohs like to move the ball out the back. There wasn't that option this week, and it meant that teams could get an easier read on it. So Kennedy is very much like Johnson. He's a running fullback. He's not a ball player. Whereas Moylan, or like Mitchell, ball player. So they need to have one consistent message going through and one consistent approach, and that is this is our team, this is our spine, these are the players that are creating for us. We now need to work around them and adapt to their play style.
Yeah, because if they don't, then, you saw what happened to the Bunnies.
Yeah, it breeds inconsistency, unfortunately, and it's injuries. You can't help it. It's not as if they're chopping and changing for fun. But when an injury happens as frequently as it does as Moylan's hamstring, you then need to make calls as to whether you want to be a finals team that does well or a team that squeezes into the 8 and probably goes out in the first round.
We'll find out soon enough, mate.
We will. And on to another team that is trying to make a push for the finals. And I'll tell you what, this was probably one of their best performances in a long time. The Cowboys still, though, unfortunately, coming off the second best as they go down 22-10 to the Panthers. It was just a real dogged game, that.
Yeah, look, I was out and about, so I had it on the radio for the most part on Triple M. And, yeah, it didn't sound like for the first 50 minutes to be a game that anyone wanted to watch or be a part of or anything. It just sounded like an absolute dogfest. But towards the end there, we saw Nathan Cleary really take control as he has done for a lot of this season. And it just worked. That's all that needs to be said about it. It just worked. Cleary, Luai obviously going through for his try early on really helped out in that regard. The Cowboys, what was it, 10-4 after 50 minutes, I think it was. The hammer, Tabuai Fido with a superb do-it-yourself kind of try, and then Arcee going over for his first. But, that was the wake-up call I think that the Panthers needed. After that, Naden went over. 10 minutes later, Crichton went over. The Panthers just looked better for it. And Look, you hate to say it because it wasn't that long ago that he was a premiership coach, but now the furnace is starting to be lit under Paul Green.
Yeah, and I tell you what, they should be using Dejan Arce a lot more. He looked really, really good. And again, when a player comes in and it's their first few games, they always do turn it up a little bit more. They always give that little bit extra because they're trying to impress. And do you know what fair dues? But yeah, it were the young blokes that really stood up. But I tell you what, Nathan Cleary had one of the best games I've seen him play in a long time. Not even just for his kicking or the way that he steered the team around, but in defence, I think he ended up coming up with 3 forced errors late in that second half. He had Cohen Hess absolutely marked up. I mean, and Cleary was absolutely all over everything. He had his hands on everything. And he's seeing the benefit of having a house partner that can kick again. Because when teams are rushing him up, just move it on to Luai. Move it on and let him put a shot kick in. Like when I was talking about the Knights and with Pierce, where, great infield and in-play kicker, exactly the same way with Cleary. Just move it onto Luai, let him put in a grubber and chase it himself, because he forces a good amount of dropouts. I've not got the stats handy, but he does well for forcing dropouts, and he's a really, really determined player. And he knows now that he's got Burton and Tyrone May, who's been forced out into the 14 shirt, breathing down his neck. And it's worthwhile mentioning as well, the Panthers lost Edwards for the last 20 minutes of that game. So Stephen Crichton ended up going to fullback. And he didn't look out of place either. So the Panthers just have so much ridiculous young talent depth. And their biggest concern right now should be how do they retain it all? Because if Barrett goes to the Dogs, as the assistant at Penrith, there's a good chance that he maybe gives Matt Burton a tap on the shoulder and says, "You're not merely making the 17 over here, mate. Come over here and we'll move a few players on for you." And exactly the same with some of the other boys out the backs as well. So Penrith fans should maybe just pinch their optimism for the second. They're top of the ladder. That's brilliant, fantastic. They are. I think that they're going to make the final. They're going to be there at the big dance at the end of the season if they carry on like this. But the Panthers also need to worry about their recruitment as well, because they've got so many young, good quality players. They are struggling to interchange them and probably keep them all happy at the minute.
Yeah, and if there's never a positive about anyone being injured, but if there is, it means that Caleb Aikens is going to jump back into the one. But that's even if he does. If you think about what was going on at the start of the year when Crichton was the 14, Aikens will play 60 minutes and then Crichton would jump on for the last 15 as that impact player. Now, if they very well may just bring, depending on if Farre plays or is ready to play or not, they may just throw Crichton back and bring Farre into the centres. But if not, they have the option of Aikens, who is again more of a running fullback. But I don't think that's going to worry them too much because they have the likes of Luai, they have the likes of Cleary. You have May on the bench, who's just sitting there twiddling his thumbs for 50 minutes before saying, "Hey, all right, let's go have a run. Let's have a bit of an energy spark." And you have, these insane players on the outside. Mansell broke something like 8 or 9 tackles today, ran for over 200 meters. A ball playing lock who can barrel over and has played centre before if they have to shove him out that way. I am frothing at the mouth right now at the prospect of a Panthers Parramatta grand final. Because I will pay the 50-meter tickets right down there to watch it. That excites me, I think, more than any other potential matchup this year.
Yeah. You don't need to worry about that because it'd be Roosters Panthers, but but no, I mean the Panthers now have got a little bit of uncertainty ahead over their roster. Crichton to the Bulldogs is still on the cards if you are to believe the rumours that are circulating, but then again they're on about getting Cotrics, or is it a case of both or one or the other? I don't know, but that'll probably be to be discussed at a later date. But we've gone through all 8 games, given our thoughts, and reviewed some of our tips as well. We hope you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel, and no, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.